All right, we're live. We are live. We are live. All right. It is hump day. How y'all doing out there? Okay. All right. Ashley in the building. Yes. AJ in the building. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very much appreciated. Ashley, put out the word. Put out the word. Okay. We got all Crusaders. We have any trolls in here? Yes? No? No? I hope not. I hope not. What is going on here? Man, oh man. All right. Yes. All right, Mr. Cooper in the house. Stars. All out. What is going on? Man. What is this? I had to go live as soon as I read this. As soon as I read it, man. And I'm kind of late. This story surfaced, I think, yesterday, right? Or at least the article I read surfaced yesterday. Man, oh man. What in the world? What in the world is going on? You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, very, very good channel. Very good channel. A lot of stuff I didn't know about until now he was in the industry. So he would know about this. And his channel really gave me more insight on this dog nuttery. 100%. And I'm quite sure the Satanists are happy about this one. Bloodshed, bloodshed, bloodshed. Child blood. These people are sick. What a crazy story. So now is his name is Axel, right? If I'm not mistaken, his name is Axel. What's his name? Yes, Axel. It's his last name. Oh, where is his name? Axel Foster. Okay, let me highlight that. Axel Foster. I'll put it in bold and underline it. Because you know how these dog nuts do. They always include the dog's name. And they repeat it over and over. Over and over. I mean, unnecessarily. And quite often they don't even mention the child's name. Even if the child was attacked by the dog. But this was so crazy, I had to go live immediately. What in the world? A lot of crazy, this story is crazy, but it's typical. These dog attack stories, they're always crazy, and the craziness is protocol. So this 4-year-old boy, Axel Foster, had his arm bitten off at the shoulder. At the shoulder. Can you imagine what that looked like? As it happened, I had problems imagining that. I would imagine the dog sort of maybe even leapt up, but a 4-year-old boy, dog didn't have to jump. And it sounds like the dog clamped down, right on his arm. And just shook until the arm came off. No stream notice. Yeah. I figured that. Gerara in the building. Mr. Cooper in the building. ABQ in the building. What is going on? Ain't this crazy? Now, I know most of y'all, you heard about this already. Gene in the house. Y'all heard about this already. Excuse me, I'm late. And look, I'm telling you, once I start doing this full time, and I will do this full time someday. Maybe it's when I retire. But if I'm still alive, I will be doing this full time. And when I am, I'm going to have a team, at least one person, who will help me to keep up with the news. What in the world? Yeah, I'm blackballed by YouTube. That's okay. That's okay. Horrible, horrible story here. 4-year-old boy had his arm ripped off. Was mauled by a pit bull. Y'all see I put that in caps. The pit bull nuts. They hate that. They hate when you mention that it was a pit bull. So let me mention it. Let me put it in red lettering. Let me increase the size and all of that. All of that. Poor boy. No control over his environment. Totally brainwashed by his parents, by society. The police officer said that he's seen many dog bites, but never a complete amputation. When the officer arrived, found the toddler's grandmother in the driveway, he was missing his right arm just below the shoulder. Unbelievable. And it just goes to show how much power these things have, especially when they attack a toddler. I mean, very, very powerful. You would imagine that an animal that completely bit off the arm of a toddler, 4-year-old, many people would say, oh, it must have been a lion that did that, or a tiger. No, it was a dog. That's why they should be banned. They should be banned and driven into extinction. For anybody who, stumble across this channel for the first time, yes, 100% these things should be driven into complete extinction. At the very least, bully breeds. At the very least. The officer began applying his tourniquet from his vest. The child's arm was still in the pen. I could see the arm inside. One of the puppies was trying to chew on it. Horrible, horrible stuff. I guess they shot one of the mutts. When officers, animal control, attempted to retrieve the arm, the dog became aggressive. And one of the dogs was killed. There were multiple dogs in this pen. Multiple dogs. Axel's grandmother told police that the boy put his hand inside the pen that had several dogs to pet some puppies. And that's when the dog attacked him. Now let me highlight that right there. Let me highlight that right there. Who taught this 4-year-old to do that? He was only 4 years old. Well, he's still alive. Who taught this child to do that? Who taught this child that dogs are loving creatures that you should want to pet? Who taught this child not to fear dogs? This process of getting kids to not be afraid of dogs, y'all know how hard these dog nuts work on these kids to remove their fear? They lecture them. They literally force these kids to interact with dogs and to pet them, to touch them. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It is sacrifice. These are sanctioned sacrifices. The officer said, I'm hoping it was simply an accident that the child was able to get to the pen. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to need some help on that one. What do you mean? An accident that the child was able to get to the pen? It's not an accident. It's a sacrifice. The dogs were purchased on purpose. They were put in this pen. They made the pen for the dogs on purpose. The adults, It's not like the adults were unaware that the dogs had the capability to do this. Now, I could understand if it was some, mysterious creature that doesn't, they've never seen it before, didn't know it was capable of attacking. No, these people knew full well that this could happen. And they did what? They took the chance anyway. That's not an accident. That's not an accident. That's a sacrifice. They gambled. They decided to sacrifice the child's safety. No accidents. Let's get that clear. And this is always the narrative. Accident, 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 because that's part of the sacrificial culture, to call it an accident. Axel's mom told I think the news, the media, that he went to have his arm reattached. The thought of her son being in pain is more than she can bear. We raced to the hospital. When we got there, the nurses confirmed his arm was dismembered from his body. I don't know what he's going through. I never went through it. But he's only a child. What if he doesn't make it through? To be over just an innocent type of thing, as wanting to pet some puppies, it's just devastating. Now who said this? The chief made that statement. But here's the problem, Chief and everybody else. You all would have encouraged it if you were there. They would have encouraged it. And the proof is the fact that they said that the case is dependent on whether or not the child was being supervised at the time. If the child was being supervised, then nobody will face charges, right? It says it right here. Department, they're trying to determine if Axel was being supervised at the time. Told the grandparents they could face child neglect charges if Axel was unsupervised. Now, this is the nuttery that infuriates me, as you all know. Because let's say he was being supervised. For argument's sake, let's say he was being supervised. What difference does it make? All that means is that they were unable to stop the attack, even though he was being supervised. If he was being supervised, are we going to just say, oh, well, okay, well, it's not your fault? No. The very fact that the boy had his arm bitten off, even though he was being supervised, tells you that supervision is irrelevant. It's worthless. It does not help. It doesn't change a thing. How safe is a child just because the child is being supervised? If I'm sitting over here in the corner and I say, okay, go pet this crocodile. The fact that I'm supervising the child is nullified. Does that make sense? I have been attacking this narrative of supervision for so long, people. And every attack confirms how worthless and meaningless, pointless supervision is. Every single one. Shout out to DB Cooper in the super chat. Dog insults. Parasites with legs. Rodents, slobbering mutts. Yes. Yes. Demons. I mean, any and everything you can think of that is negative applies perfectly to these worthless mutants. These things, and this is a good reminder to people, these dog nuts especially, how dangerous these things are. They have the capability of biting a 4-year-old's arm completely off. Not the child's hand, the child's arm. Now you would imagine that something like this would help to prompt banning at least bully breeds. It doesn't. As a matter of fact, currently, breed-specific legislation is being removed all across the country. And this is the result. This is what you get. Unbelievable stuff. Now, all you dog nuts, you pit nutters, I want to ask y'all a question. Aren't you ashamed? Aren't you ashamed that all other animals, that all wild animals, aren't you ashamed that they value their children more than you value yours? It should. You should feel embarrassed about that. Because that is a fact. Because no other animal on the planet would bring dogs around their children, their youth, their offspring. No other animal on this planet would do that. Only you dog nuts, you pit nutters. Doesn't that embarrass you? You're not ashamed by that? The fact that that doesn't eat you up inside, that's troubling. That's troubling. These are the animals that they want to bend over backwards to rescue, that they want to thrust in your face and tell you that you should adopt. You know, in stories like this, in articles like this, you'll have some pit nutters who say, oh, this is unfortunate. Not all pit bulls are bad. And then they'll post a photo of their pit bull, maybe in a t-shirt. Look at this lovable pit bull. After reading a story like this, how could you possibly go back and cuddle with your pit bull? How could you possibly do that? This is very disturbing. Very disturbing. What in the world? This is infuriating, man. This idea that the parents, the adults, won't face charges as long as they can prove that they were supervising the child, that is infuriating. Whether they were supervising the child or not, they are responsible. They created the conditions for it to happen. They consciously, knowingly created a dangerous, deadly environment for the child. And they just took the risk. So you're not allowed to feel sorry, to be devastated. No, you're not allowed to. You know, it's unconvincing. I cannot believe that you truly are remorseful. If you can't predict, if you can't act on the knowledge that it can happen and tell yourself, look, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to purchase this mutt. I'm not going to keep dogs. Then I cannot believe that you're truly sorry. And that's how it should be. That's how it should be. This is very disturbing. This sanctioned sacrifice, sacrificial cult. I doubt anything happens to these parents. And if anything does happen, let's say they get sent to jail. So what? You still allow everybody else who own pit bulls to continue owning them, bully breeds, and you're still going to allow people to purchase bully breeds, whether or not they have children in the home. This is exactly what's going to happen. So yet another sacrifice, and nothing is going to be done to prevent this from happening in the future. Matter of fact, they're going to respond to this by making more cartoons, more movies, projecting dogs, projecting pit bulls, bully breeds as loving creatures. What's the name of that cartoon that they came out with not long ago? A cartoon about a stray bully breed. Let me see if I can. What is the name of that cartoon? These people actually made a cartoon about a bully breed. Anybody remember the name of that? Oh yeah. Yeah. Now, tell me, what else in society rips off a 4-year-old's arm? You really don't even hear about people doing this to a 4-year-old. Literally nothing else in society will do things like this. Only dogs. And yet there's no regulation whatsoever. Yet these things are pushed into homes. They are projected as the best friends of kids. You know, really, dogs are really marketed to kids. The way they promote and market dogs, they push them to kids. That's why they always show photos, commercials of dogs with kids, because they want kids to want them. They want kids to beg their parents for a doggy. And they're going to continue to do it. No organizations whatsoever that will be dead set against this. No organizations whose goal is to educate the people on how dangerous these things are, how you should not bring them into your home, into a community, into a home with a family. There's so many steps, preventative measures that could be taken that would signal that these people have concern for the youth. At the very least, they could ban bully breeds. They don't do that. At the very least, they could say, hey, look, if you have kids in the home, you cannot own these creatures. They don't do that. You know, they actually try to encourage you to purchase and own these things if you have kids. Y'all remember that article I read a little while ago? They started the article off talking about how kids and dogs are like a match made in heaven. Like they're the best of companions. How does that narrative look now? But as always, they will brush over this. They will try their hardest to forget about it. And they will continue to, and right, it's Christmas time. Christmas time. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the bacteria. And somebody recently caught capnocytophaga. Somebody recently caught capnocytophaga and had to have their limbs amputated, right? Shout out to Deanna Rivera in the super chat. As dog nuts lack basic protective instincts. And that's a big deal with me. Because, you know, I envy wild animals. I envy insects. I envy how protective they are of their youth. And I shouldn't envy them, because humans should be even more protective, seeing that we are the most intelligent creatures on the planet. That is what's so embarrassing. These wild animals are nowhere near as intelligent as humans. But in regard to protecting their offspring, they are light years more intelligent. That is embarrassing. These wild animals can't build anything like humans can. They can't make music. Look, I value humans. I think humans are fascinating. The things that we're capable of doing shouldn't be taken for granted. The way we can create something out of nothing. But these people look at humans as being no better than dogs. I remember just recently we went over an article where this dog nut literally said that human life is no more important than a dog's life. Do you feel that way now? You know, if a dog were to bite the leg off of another dog, nobody would view that as being no different from the dog biting the arm off of a 4-year-old. Who are you kidding? Yeah. Yeah. Annabelle, good point. Says another cliche is acting like the death of a dog is the worst thing that could happen to someone. And you already know these dog nuts are going to mourn and be sad and express their sadness over the fact that one of the dogs were shot. Even after stories like this, they will say that they are heartbroken that the dogs had to die. Even after the dog bit off a 4-year-old's arm. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is scary. Scary. Very frustrating. Very frustrating. The human species is so far on the wrong path. And, you know, some of these dog nuts, they listen to me and they're dumbfounded. Even though we just talk common sense. Nothing is rocket science that we talk about here on this channel or in any other anti-dog platform. We just talk common sense. Hey, keep predators away from your kids. Duh. But they're so brainwashed. So brainwashed that they're appalled. It's not all dogs. How could you care about what happens to a dog at this point? How could you even care? Yeah. And sadly, there won't be any protests. Sadly. After the toddler had his arm bitten off, y'all remember that, it's like a year or so ago. He had his arm bitten off like at the elbow. Y'all remember that? The video is still up on my channel. Y'all remember what happened in that situation? This boy had his arm bitten off by a husky. And what did those adult dog nuts do? They made up a lie to protect the dog. They lied on the child. They consciously said to themselves, let's blame the child so that the dog won't be put down. Crazy, man. They lied on this boy. They said that he was aggravating the dog. That the boy went upstairs, grabbed a sock, put the sock over his hand, stuck his hand underneath the fence. This is what they said. They made this lie up. Said the child stuck his hand underneath the fence to play with the dog with a sock over his hand. Now, they said that the boy put a sock over his hand to protect the dog. That was their way of trying to suggest that the dog didn't know that it was a child's hand that it bit off. They couldn't just say that the boy stuck his hand underneath the fence, because that would make the dog look bad. That's another way of saying, whoa, the dog knew that this was a human arm and made the decision to bite. So they say, oh, let's say that the boy put a sock over his hand and stuck his hand underneath. What kind of child does that? And I question this story. They're saying that the boy, did y'all see the pen that they're talking about? Let me see if I can pull up a photo of this. I just saw it on a news coverage of this. Actually, that'll probably mess up everything. But people, it was nothing but a fence. This pen that they're talking about, that the boy stuck his hand inside, it was just a fence. And I question that. Because if the boy tried to do that, he could only stick like his hand in there. Not his entire arm. It sounded like that child went inside of that pen. And nobody can convince me that a 4-year-old independently made the decision to do that without being brainwashed by the adults to view those dogs as cuddly, loving creatures. These adults, these parents are 100% responsible for this. Now, y'all remember those dog nuts, back to what I was talking about, who lied on that child, blamed the child. Y'all remember I did a video on it immediately, as soon as I heard it. Shortly after we covered that story, the mother came out and admitted that it was a lie on Facebook. Y'all remember that? Because the story was so ridiculous. We was tearing that story apart. Like, what are you talking about? What kind of child does that? Go put a sock over their hand, stick their hand underneath the fence. Whereas the truth was, that dog escaped. It had dug a hole under the fence and escaped, latched on to the boy, and tried to drag the boy back underneath the fence. And that's how the dog bit the boy's arm off. That's what really happened. And they lied on that boy. So unfortunately, there won't be any protests about this. No protests. In fact, the only thing that's going to happen is these dog nuts are going to feel sorry and remorseful. They're going to mourn over the fact that a dog was killed. Over the fact that another dog might get put down. That's the only thing they care about, is what happens to the dog. Well, this was so unfortunate what happened to the child, but it's so sad that now the dog has to lose its life. Man, oh man. Yeah. Yeah. Just like the man supposedly robbed the went to escape the house and attack. Yeah. And it's pretty crazy how brainwashed and blinded these dog nuts are. Because dogs are so much the opposite of what they try to project them to be. Loving creatures from heaven, yet they bark and threaten every single person they see. They're always showing their teeth, always acting violent and aggressive. They always remind us that they are dangerous. And these people, night and day, create Twitter accounts, Instagram accounts, and they are on these accounts every day. And their whole agenda is to brainwash the public into viewing dogs as harmless, cuddly creatures that will only be violent if you train them to be violent. Which is the exact opposite of what goes on. These people bend over backwards trying to train dogs to not attack people. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And these people can read about stories like this, and I guarantee you, a lot of pit nutters are aware of this story. They will try their best to justify it. Oh, the dog must have been neglected. Dog must have been mistreated. Poor doggy. These people shouldn't be dog owners. Huh? Do y'all think these dogs were mistreated? Do you think they were raised incorrectly? And that that's the reason why? No, these people raised these mutts with love. That's exactly what happened. And this is what you get. Because it doesn't matter how you raise these worthless mutants. Especially with kids. They're going to attack. It's only a matter of time. And pit nutters, all you dog nuts, I don't want to hear about how your dog has never attacked anyone. Because it could have. And it might in the future. Like we say all the time, the point here is that you cannot predict which ones will and which ones won't. And that's the reason you need to get rid of all of them. All of them. Exactly. And sometimes not even that. Annabelle says noise and movement is the only provocation a dog needs to attack. Exactly. And sometimes not even that. That girl, Brooklyn Corin, she was showing the dog affection. Showing the dog affection. This child was trying to be affectionate. Crazy. And, you know, the fact that it's so close to Christmas, you would think that would motivate these people, you know, would light a fire underneath them to finally do something, take steps towards preventing this from happening in the future. It won't do anything. Nothing at all. Only thing this is going to do is encourage these dog nuts to bring their kids around bully breeds even more. Let's show the world that not all pit bulls are bad. Here, come in here. Come pet the dog. That's the craziest thing about it. Stories like this motivates these pit nutters to bring their dogs or bring their kids around the dog. Let's get some photos. Let's get a video. Man, oh man. What in the world? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a mental disorder. Definitely a mental disorder. And the statistics, in their mind, they always try to rationalize it. No matter what statistics you put before them, they try their best to rationalize it. And this happens too often, far too often, to try to rationalize it. Now, if it wasn't a dog, let's say dogs were not in society. Let's say my dream came true and all dogs were extinct. What else would rip a child's arm off? Literally nothing. Literally nothing. Dogs are the only true deadly threat to a 4-year-old, to toddlers, to babies. Crazy. Crazy. And yet we can't even keep breed-specific legislation in place. So we'll see if anything comes out of this. I'm going to keep up with this story. I don't know how they're going to determine whether or not the boy was being supervised, like I said, it does not matter. It does not matter. The crime is in the fact that the dogs were there. That's the crime. Even if the boy was being supervised, you clearly see that didn't help. I mean, you know, what's the point in trying to determine whether or not the child was being supervised if the child was attacked and had his arm bitten off? It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. The true problem is not supervision. The true problem is the presence of the dog. I could not be a judge. There's no way. There's no way. We need a judge. The Crusaders need a judge. You know, I want to see it because I think that judge, they would lose their job. 100%. Because I would charge the parents with murder and all of that. Everything I possibly could. You know? And it's just sad. It's sad that we have laws on the book. This is the real problem. We got laws on the books right now to prosecute the parents of this child. And they're going to overlook those laws. And that is when you knowingly create a dangerous, hazardous environment. Right? You leave a gun in the house, on the sofa, you're guilty. You bring a living predator in the house, oh, that's just fine. And if the predator bites the child's arm off, oh, that's just an accident. Nobody can convince me that that is not the behavior of a child sacrificial cult. That is very, very overt child sacrifice. Let's see if they do the right thing. Let's see if anything constructive comes out of this horrific attack. This boy is going to be traumatized for the rest of his life. And the worst part is that his family is going to encourage him. They're going to try their best to convince him to not hold a grudge against dogs. They're going to try their best to convince him to still love dogs. Literally nothing that I can think of right now is as sick as that. Nothing. So I want to thank everybody who shares these videos, especially videos like this, and who helps to spread the word. This is one of the most important things that anybody could do right now, to spread awareness of this disgusting, sick cult. Yes. Yeah, I agree. You know, and street justice, that's a politically correct way to say it. Street justice is the only way to deal with these things. Street justice. But these people are going to respond to this story by posting more photos of pit bulls. I guarantee you, stories like this make it to these dog nut groups on Facebook. I've seen these groups. Whenever they bring up stories like this or talk about stories like this, that's when you see more photos of dogs. Because the first thing they want to do is post a photo of their dog looking harmless. These are among the sickest people this planet has ever seen. Yes. So that is all for now, if you hear about any updates, please share in the comment section to this video. I would really like to know if these people are going to get in trouble. I want to hear what type of story they're going to come up with, whether or not the child was being supervised. I want to know whether or not they suggest to other people to not let bully breeds, at least not let bully breeds in the home, to not own them. Let's see if the family gets rid of the pit bulls that they have. I can guarantee you they won't. One of the dogs was shot and killed. I guarantee you they're going to replace that dog. That is just how crazy and sick these people are. So until next time, people, be safe out there. Keep a close eye on your children. As I always say, whenever there's a dog present and you have your child, pick your child up. Pick your child up. Make it obvious that the reason you're picking your child up is because a dog is present. We need to wear our sanity on our sleeve, because stuff like this, there's no excuse. It should never, ever happen. Ever happen. Look, if any animal, a horse, a deer, if any animal were to bring their youth around a predator, the scientists would investigate. They would insist that something is wrong with this deer. 100%. They would speculate and say that this deer or this animal must have some type of mental problem, must be under the possession of some type of mind-controlling parasite. They would not accept the idea that the animal simply views the pit bull or the dog as some cuddly companion. So there's no reason why we shouldn't question the sanity of every dog nut walking this planet. 100%. So until next time, as we continue with this sad, this is very unfortunate, should be unnecessary crusade against these worthless mutants and their enabling owners.